Hey guys, it's Pastor Brian here. We're reading through a book called The Promise of Life, a big story about God's law, and we're at part 5, The Gift of Life. Now, if you remember, from part 1, we remember that Adam and Eve were created in the Garden of Eden, and they enjoyed life with God, and they had to obey, but they didn't. And so death came, and they became slaves to sin. But God promised to Abraham that he would bless all the nations through Abraham's future family and through his future son. And we saw that Israel were slaves to Egypt, and God has freed them from Egypt and promised to bring them into the new land where they could enjoy life with God. But what was the problem? Israel, the nation of Israel, were slaves to sin, just like Adam and Eve. Everyone before them. So they came to the new land, but they weren't the people that they were supposed to be. They disobeyed the law, and they eventually were cursed and kicked out of the land, and God left the temple. So how in the world are people going to have life if they're slaves to sin? Part 5, the gift of life. 2 scriptures. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, "Cursed is everyone who is hanged on a tree." Galatians 3:13. Through this man forgiveness of sins is proclaimed to you, and by him everyone who believes is freed from everything from which you could not be freed by the law of Moses. Acts 13 verses 38 and 39. Picture here as we see Jesus carrying his cross. Part 5, the gift of life. A long time later, Jesus was born into Abraham's family. See Jesus in a manger. Jesus perfectly obeyed all of God's laws. He never once disobeyed God. Adam disobeyed and Israel disobeyed, but Jesus always did what pleased God. Jesus was the one from Abraham's family who brought God's blessing to all peoples. Because of sin, God's laws brought death to the world, but God brought life to the world through Jesus. We see Jesus' healing over here. We see Israel's Pharisees and the rulers are putting traditions and their own rules on top of the backs of the people. Every person in the world has disobeyed God's law, and every person is under the curse of the law, deserving to die away from God. But God sent Jesus to save his people from the curse of the law. To do this, Jesus had to make the most dreadful and incredible swap ever. Jesus gave his perfect life of always obeying God in exchange for his people's life of disobeying God. So you see in this picture, Jesus, all in white, and you see the people are in dirty clothes, slaves to sin, and they've got a sign around their necks that says, "Curse of the Law." But then we see Jesus give them his white robes, and he removes the curse of the law from around their necks. And what does he do? Jesus takes upon himself their sin and the dirty clothes that they wear, and the curse of the law for each of these 3 people are put around Jesus' neck. What an incredible exchange. Jesus gave his people God's blessing, and he took the curse of the law from them. Under the curse of the law, Jesus died away from God so his people could have life with God. That's what we celebrate this weekend, and today on Good Friday. Every person in the world is born a slave to sin. But when Jesus died on the cross, He destroyed Satan and the power of sin. Now all those who trust in Jesus mysteriously die with him and are set free from the power of sin. Now his people are set free to serve God and not sin. Do you see these men's shackles, their chains, the slavery the slaves they were to sin have fallen off of them when they're at the foot of the cross. And now you see Jesus' foot is on top of the head of the serpent that lied to Adam and Eve. Jesus has crushed the head of Satan. After Jesus died, he was buried in a tomb. 3 days later, Jesus was raised back to life and came out of the tomb. Death could not hold him. Now, all those who trust in Jesus are mysteriously raised to life with him and will never die. Jesus gives the gift of eternal life to all who trust in him. You see that their hearts don't have the serpent around them. It's new hearts that God has given them because they trust Jesus. And that's it for part 5. Part 6 is the Christian life. And we'll read that here soon enough.